we'll see. So we were looking at this problem where we had a loop of voltage source and capacitors, and anytime you have that, one of the things that happens is that although you have two capacitors or in general a large number of capacitors, the order will be less than that, because the number of state variables that you can independently set is smaller than the number of capacitors that you have. Okay. So this Vs, we said, steps from 0 to 5 volts at t equal to 0, and then we have a loop of capacitors. Okay. Now, first of all, we know that when you have something like this, when you have a voltage source across a capacitor and the voltage steps up, the capacitor voltage has to change abruptly, because if you assume Kirchhoff's voltage law to be true, the voltage across the capacitor is the same as that across that of the voltage source. Okay. So an abrupt change in capacitor voltage means an impulse of current, basically a charge packet that gets dumped instantaneously on the capacitor plate. Okay. So you do have infinite current or impulse current at t equal to 0. Okay. Another way to see that is, if you write out the differential equation, you will have the derivative of Vs on the right side and derivative of Vc on the right side. So derivative of Vs, because it's a step, it is the derivative is an impulse, so it can only be matched by an impulse term on the left side, and that comes from the capacitor voltage also stepping up. Okay. So how do you, yeah? Yeah, there can be, but it's not relevant to the calculation, right? So for instance, depending on what the voltage across that is, depends on the value of Vs and the voltage on this side, right? The initial condition, there could be a current. So for instance, let's say that the initial condition here was something, so there is a voltage across the resistor, there will be a current, but it is not relevant, because whatever finite amount of current flowing through a capacitor for an infinitesimal extent of time will not change its voltage. So we don't have to take that into account for calculating the capacitor voltages. Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. That current will be there, and that current will flow, but it won't cause any change in the voltages, so you don't have to account for that. Okay. So now, basically, see, this is still because we are still talking about piecewise constant inputs, right? Except at t equal to 0, everything else can be solved from what you know earlier, right? Because you take at any point, you know the values of the capacitor voltages, and from there you evaluate the time constant, and the natural response takes over and goes on. Okay. So it's only at t equal to 0 that there is some problem, and because it's only that one, we know that the impulse current goes only through the capacitors. So we can consider only the loop of voltage source and capacitors to calculate what happens at t equal to 0. That is, if there are any jumps. Okay. Remember earlier, like in the other case when we didn't have the 3 nanofarad capacitor, we would just say that the capacitor voltage cannot change instantly. Assume that the capacitor voltage is the same for t equals 0 minus and 0 plus, and go ahead with the calculation. The only difference from earlier is, between 0 minus and 0 plus, there can be some change in the capacitor voltage. That's all. Okay. And we also saw how to calculate it. The basic point is, the charge on whatever charge is on this combined plate cannot leave that. Obviously, it's an isolated plate, right? Not connected to anything else. Only thing that can happen is it can move from that plate to this plate. Okay. So when you had this step from 0 to 5 volts, okay, and this was 0. The initial condition on both capacitors was 0. So, the charge on this plate was 0, the charge on that plate was also 0. So, what happened when it jumped from 0 to 5 volt, you can calculate that this comes out to be 3 volts, a jump of 3 volts, and this will be a jump of 2 volts. Okay. Now, instead, if initially the voltage across this was 2 volts, what would happen? By the way, what I mean is this jumps from 0 to 3 volts, this jumps from 0 to 2 volts. So, initially you had 2 volts already across the 2 nanofarad capacitor. What happens? What will be the voltage across the 2 nanofarad capacitor? What will it jump from what? How did we calculate this yesterday? Again, you can look at the charge on this plate, that you can calculate. You have 2 volts here, 2 volts there, so some number. So, what did you get the voltages to be? On the 2 nanofarad capacitor, it starts from 2 volts, it goes to what? 5 volts. And on the 3 nanofarad capacitor, in this polarity, it starts from minus 2 volts and goes to what? 0. Okay. So, actually the amount of jump is exactly the same. It's got nothing to do with the initial condition, right? The voltage across the 2 nanofarad capacitor increments by 3 volts. The voltage across the 3 nanofarad capacitor increments by 2 volts. Okay. Now, if it initially had some charge, that simply gets added to it. Is this fine? Is this okay? And another way to think about it is that the current here, what is the current? If I had to write an expression for the current in this case, what would that be? So, the voltage source jumps from 0 to 5 volts at basically t equal to 0, and we have these capacitors. So, what is the expression for the current? How do you calculate it? Yeah. So, basically you have to see how much charge goes in, right, eventually. So, what is the amount of charge that flows? 6 nanocoulombs. Okay. So, that's what it is. Okay. That's the expression for the current, and that is unrelated to how much charge is there initially in the capacitors. Okay. So, whether you have whether the 2 nanofarad capacitor initially was charged to 0 volts or 2 volts or any other voltage, this current will be the same. If the current is the same in a capacitor, what can you say about its voltages? The voltage change will be the same, right? Because the voltage change over an interval is the integral of current in that interval. So, if the current remains the same, the voltage change over that interval will be the same. It could well be that the initial voltage was different, so whatever voltage change was there gets added to it. Okay. So, you can, when you have these cases, you don't have to worry about the initial condition, meaning you have to take that into account, but the amount of change is independent of that. So, you just calculate the amount of change and then add it to whatever was before. Okay. So, and for the particular example, because we saw that first of all with the 0 initial condition, what was this? The input voltage Vs, of course, jumps from 0 to 5 volts. What happens to Vc? With 0 initial condition, what was that? Jumps to 3 volts. and then goes to 5 volts eventually. The steady state voltage is 5 volts, right? If you open circuit both capacitors across this, you get 5 volts. Okay. What is the time constant in this case? How do you find out? You asked about the time constant. So, if you set the source to 0, you get 1 kilo ohms, 2 nanofarads and 3 nanofarads and 2 nanofarads. Okay. So, this is obviously a single capacitor of 5 nanofarad in parallel with 1 kilo ohm. Now, if it is a first order circuit, it will always be reducible to this picture, right? A single capacitor in parallel with a single resistor, or a single inductor in parallel with a single resistor. Okay. Well, if you have a source free circuit, if you have a series and it's an open, then there is no current at all. That's a little strange thing to have. It will be in parallel. Right. There are multiple? No. The capacitor has two terminals, right? You have to somehow reduce the picture to a single capacitor. If you can't do that, it's not a first order circuit. Okay. Now, your capacitor has two terminals. Now, whatever circuit you have here, as long as it's a linear circuit, that also is reducible to a single resistor. In fact, the tutorial has a number of examples of this type. The idea of large number of problems was so that you get practice. Yeah, I mean, if you get confused, simply solve it formally, then look at the intuition behind it. Okay. So, now in this case, the time constant is 5 microseconds. Okay. If it's a first order circuit, right, the natural response will be, natural mode will be exponential minus t by tau. Now, any quantity in the circuit will have this. Okay. Yeah. Is unrelated to what quantity you are finding. Okay. So, whether let us say I had asked you for this particular current, then you would do the same. Okay. No, I mean there will be only one pair of terminals, right, eventually. If you have only one capacitor and one resistor, how many pairs will you have? Okay, you will have only one pair of terminals, eventually, that is all. Is it okay? Now, of course, you can, I mean, if you start with an initial condition of 2 volts, what would the response look like? It starts from 2 here and then it simply jumps to, let us say it was 2 before, it jumps to 5 and stays there, because the steady state response is also 5 volts. The moment it goes to 5 volts here, no current flows through the resistor and that is it, everything just stops. Okay? And such things can happen sometimes. Which is the same. Oh, because the differential equation, the homogeneous part is related to the source free circuit, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think it can be shown from, you can probably write down some analysis matrix and it will be related to the determinant, the denominator. So, okay. I haven't done that, but yeah, it can be shown. So, if you have jumps, right, you should, I mean, in fact, you should always technically write it as 0 minus, that is just before the step. Okay. So, of course, if you don't have voltage jumps at t equal to 0 on capacitors, it does not matter whether it is 0 minus or 0 or so on. But we should always write it as just before the step is applied, this is what it is. Okay. By the way, this capacitor voltage jump I treated especially because I mean, normally you don't expect it to jump with finite currents, of course it cannot jump. Whereas if you took some other quantity, I mean, even in a case like this, where we don't have voltage source capacitor loops, if we took this current, that definitely jumps, right? That we know already. I mean, it jumps from 0 to V by R because this is initially at 0. So if you take a first order differential equation, I mean, if you take a first order circuit, there will be some quantities which will experience jumps, some others which will not experience jumps. So you will be given the condition for 0 minus, you find the condition for 0 plus and for infinity, that is just after 0 and the steady state value and the time constant. So now you know the entire curve that connects between 0 plus and infinity, that's all. Okay. The only thing is, when you have voltage source capacitor loops, you have to calculate it especially based on this capacitor ratios. Okay. By the way, to answer your question about why everything will have the same mode, at least for a first order circuit, is easy to see. So it is after all going to be like one capacitor and a number of resistors inside, right? So if the capacitor voltage has this natural mode, everywhere else you will have a linear combination of this capacitor voltage and maybe from the independent sources. So it will have the same natural mode as okay. You can, I mean, use the substitution theorem. Let's say you solve for the circuit, you know that across the capacitor you have the natural mode. You replace that voltage, you replace the capacitor with a voltage source of that, I mean, the time varying, this exact same function that the capacitor voltage is. Then you now have only circuit with resistors and sources, so everything will be linear combination of this. Okay. Any other questions on first order circuits? Did you attempt the problems in the tutorial yet? You were able to do them or no? What? How many of you attempted at least like 5 problems? Okay. So was there any particular difficulty with any of them? Huh? Time constant. I see. Yeah. Yeah. No, you have to make the source equal to 0 and see what appears across the inductor. Okay. Yeah. If it is not a first order circuit, it shouldn't be in today's tutorial. No, but see, this concept of time constant is just one number. This business of describing the circuit by a time constant, a single time constant, is applicable only to first order circuits. Okay, so if you have more than one inductor, many things can happen, that we will see. I mean, it could be that you can describe it with 2 real numbers. I mean, or rather, you can always describe it with 2 real numbers, but there could be 2 time constants or something else that you use. I mean, it's just like the, I think you are familiar with critical damping, over damping and under damping and all these things. So all those problems, basically you can solve it in the general template, finding the value just after 0 and at infinity and connecting them by an exponential whose time constant you have to determine. To determine the time constant, you have to reduce the circuit's independent sources to 0 and find the single R and single C or single R and single L that appears in parallel with each other. Okay. So when the capacitor was introduced, when did you first get introduced to the capacitor? 12th. Okay, whatever class it was. I mean, what were the few things that you heard about the capacitor? Huh? Holds charge then? Something related to AC, DC and all this stuff. Huh? Does not allow AC. Does not allow DC. Have you heard this? Capacitor blocks DC. What happens in the circuit? Where does the current flow? Huh? Where is the current flow? Yeah, I have 1 milliamp DC source and it's connected to a capacitor. So what happens? It obviously goes through the capacitor. So what's this business of blocking DC? Huh? Voltage source. It blocks only voltage sources. It knows what it's connected to and then it blocks only. Huh? So please refine that statement to be precise and correct. What point? Yeah? So does the capacitor block DC or not? Yes or no? Yes. Huh? Steady state DC won't affect? I mean, it's related to that. Yeah, what is it? In steady state, what happens? In steady state, you can't have DC. What about this circuit? Time, sorry, what's time? Change in time constant. What is the time constant here? What is it? Yeah, what? How much is it? I use the same thing that I've been telling you, right? How do you find the time constant? What is the time constant here? Infinity. Okay. It is true. In steady state, you cannot have DC flowing through a capacitor. Of course, this circuit doesn't ever reach steady state because its time constant is infinity. Okay. Isn't it? I mean, it will keep on going. The voltage across the capacitor will keep on going. It will stop somewhere, but that point is infinity. Actually, it doesn't stop. Right? So, the more precise statement is that in steady state, you cannot have DC, direct current through a capacitor or a constant voltage across an inductor. I mean, everything has a counterpart, right? Current versus voltage and capacitor versus inductor. So, in inductor also, I can always do this. What will happen? I have DC across an inductor. What is the time constant here? Infinite, R by L by R, right? R is 0, so it is infinite. So these circuits don't reach steady state. If you let it be, the current will reach infinity. Okay? So any other questions about first order circuits with piecewise constant inputs? Now any first order circuit with piecewise constant inputs you should be able to analyze. Okay? Yeah. No, that is all like some practical detail, right? I mean, that is, you are saying that the capacitor may get damaged or something of the sort. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, you can always imagine capacitor in vacuum. Usually capacitor gets damaged because the dielectric between the plates breaks down. But maybe if you have it in vacuum, you can, okay, you can tolerate whatever voltage you want. Any other questions on this? First order circuits with piecewise constant inputs. What is that? RC, okay. This? No, so what is the question? Yeah. No, these two circuits are exactly the same when you reduce the source to 0, right? So the natural response is the same. I mean, I'm assuming RC values are the same here. Okay. Now what appears, so if you write the differential equation for any quantity in either of these circuits, the left hand side will be the same. The right hand side will depend on what is the quantity you are considering, where you connect the source and so on. So The complete solution of course will depend on where the source is, but the natural mode will not change. So, the natural response will not change. Okay. So, I think earlier I showed some example, right, where I had, I think, some current source here, some resistor, some capacitor, another current source. So, if this is R by 2 and C, so this is exactly the same as this. Okay. Only thing is, of course, the force response from this one and this one and this one will be different. Okay. And okay, in this case you can calculate it by source transformation, but however you calculate it in any circuit, by the way, these principles are not limited to first order. In any circuit, the natural response, the left hand side of the differential equation, by definition doesn't depend on where you connect the sources. It also doesn't depend on what quantity you are considering. That is probably more interesting, but that's how it is. Okay. So, it doesn't depend on the sources, it's very easy to see, because once you reduce all the sources to 0, you get some network without any sources, and the left hand side depends on that. But it also doesn't depend on which of the quantities you consider in the circuit. Okay. Any other questions? These are all actually extremely important properties of linear systems. In fact, they are also related to probably what you studied in signals and systems in some ways. Okay. There you won't have this business of multiple sources and networks and so on, but besides that, like many of the properties that we are discussing, this exponential and things like that, you would have done that, right? In signals and systems, did you do like first differential equations, their solutions, all of this stuff? You did. So, you would have heard more or less the same things. The business of natural modes and these things were not covered, natural response, force response. No? Did you have continuous time or discrete time stuff only? Continuous time, both. Okay, but okay, in both you have natural and force response anyway. But what did you do with the differential equation? Just wrote it and stopped there? Or? Huh? Yeah, but I mean, you combine them, right? Or no? Okay. Why Laplace domain? What is the use of Laplace domain? I mean, besides the fact that it becomes very easy. We'll see, we'll also do Laplace transforms here. Okay, I think now we have had enough of this first order circuits, which are simple enough with constant inputs, which are also very simple. So, we should go to a little more sophisticated inputs. What should be the next step? What kind of input should I take? Huh? What is that? No, not the type of circuit, type of input. We'll still stay with the same boring circuit. AC, what is AC? I mean, give me a function, right? What function would you take? Sinusoid, okay. So, let me take maybe something simpler, which also helps us get to the sinusoid. I will take a time varying circuit, and I will consider the standard first order RC circuit, and I will assume that this is some exponential. Okay. Why would I do this? Hey, I looked at RC circuits with constant inputs, I got an exponential, and who knows, I go crazy and I connect one of them to the next one. So, now the second one I have to analyze with exponential input, right. So, it looks useful. So, if I am just fooling around with circuits in the lab, right. So, we know I will still write the differential equation in terms of VC. We know that maybe let me write it like this. Is that the differential equation governing this? Yes or no? It is. So, solve it. Sorry, this is VC of course, this is VC. I mean, it's the same thing that I wrote earlier, except this Vs is Vp exponential St, that's all. Is there something wrong? I mean, fine? Yeah. How do you solve this? Huh? Please try to solve this. I think you know something about differential equations already. So what I want is Vc of t, exponential, expression for Vc of t. What do you get? What terms do you get here? What is the solution? Vc of t. Okay. So again, if we try to solve it in a simple way, I think you know how to solve this. I'll just show it anyhow. One of the ways of doing it. So I can define Vc1 to be Vc minus Vp exponential St. Okay. So then what happens is the derivative of this is the derivative of that right. Now this doesn't seem very helpful because if I substitute it back there, I'll get Rc dVc1 by dt plus that's just this part plus Vc is Vc1 plus Vp exponential St equals that. So we have got this. Okay. But we are still stuck with this term. But anyway, you can take a linear combination of this one and the original one and define another variable Vc2 and get the basically make it a homogeneous solution, homogeneous equation, right? That's possible. So here I've got so clearly looking at this and that, if I define Vc2 to be I'll end up with a differential equation for Vc2 which is homogeneous, and from then I can back substitute and get it, and of course I'll get exactly the same answer that you have got. Okay, and there are so many ways to do this. So what do we get for this? Do you need me to show this in detail, or you can do this? Just make one more variable change. If you don't get it, I'll do it in next class. Okay. Try to get the final form of the solution. Vp by S plus 1 by Rc e to the, this doesn't seem correct. This is SCR plus 1. Yeah. This is fine. Yeah. Plus Vp by okay. So you should have got this. What sanity check can we use? At t equal to 0, this should cancel off that and you should be left with Vc of 0 for sure. Okay. So which is the forced response, which is the natural response here? This is the forced response, right? And this is the natural response. I mean, this is the natural mode of the circuit, you know this, right? Regardless of what input you have. So, that is the natural response, and everything other than the natural modes, that is the forced response. Okay. So, first of all, is this complete? I mean, is this solution valid for all cases? Huh? It is? What is it? SCR is minus 1. Okay. If SCR is minus 1, the denominators go to 0. What will you do then? How will you solve for it? If SCR is minus 1, what happens? Does this work? Clearly not. It won't be? E to the power, which terms will go to 1? So, you will have to solve for it, or you can take SCR plus 1 as some epsilon, take the limit of this, and you will also get that. Okay. Anyway, you can please do that. We will deal with that in the following class, but this is of course valid when S is not equal to minus 1 by RC. Okay. So, what does this mean? S equals 1 minus 1 by RC, what does it correspond to? The input is Vp exponential minus T by RC. Okay. So, if you drive an RC circuit with its own natural response, the solution will not be of this form. Okay. Any other exponential is fine, but if you took RC circuit, it has some natural response. Let us say you applied a step, it gave something, and you applied that exponential to the same kind of same RC circuit with the same time constant, same values, then the solution won't look like this. Okay. So, anyway, we will, I mean, there is a lot to do with this, we will do it. One of the most important things is that the force response to exponential ST, I mean, we have a scaling factor Vp, that is just a scaling factor, is something times exponential ST. Okay. That is actually extremely important result. I think you already know from analysis of linear systems, right. So, the response of a linear system, here we are talking about circuits which are also linear systems. The response of a linear system to an exponential ST is exponential ST itself. The only thing that changes is the scaling factor. Okay. Does this remind you of some other concept elsewhere in, what's that? Eigenvectors, right. So, you have, I mean, at least in 2D space you have a vector somewhere, and then you can multiply that with a 2 by 2 matrix, you will get another vector. It could be elsewhere, okay, in general, but for any matrix there will be some particular vector which when multiplied will point in the same direction. Of course, its size may have changed. Of course, when I say direction, it could also be opposite because the multiplying factor can be negative and so on. Okay. Now, this is of course the geometric view in a limited 2D space. In general, this can happen for like matrices not or 2 by 2, and also the scaling factors can be complex and so on. But basically, this exponential ST, this is the eigenvector or eigenfunction of linear systems. So, when a linear system operates on exponential ST, it will still be exponential ST. This is not true for any other thing, right. When we applied a step, we did not get a step that was scaled up, we got something else entirely. Okay. The forced response was something else. So this is very special. So, this is what makes the analysis of linear systems easy. Okay. This is one of the things, and this is also the reason why we use Laplace transforms in the first place. All of that is related to this. Okay. And the scaling factor, it depends on this number S. Okay. Exponential ST is characterized by the, there is only one parameter, right. T is of course time. There is only one parameter S. What is the dimension of S? It is the frequency, okay, and later you will see that it is the general complex frequency. So, you have the frequency of exponential st. I mean, if s is real, it is not like a sinusoid that you imagine normally for signals associated with some frequency, right, but still it tells you how rapidly or how slowly the exponential is rising or falling, okay. So, the scaling factor depends only on this frequency and some parameters of the system. Of course, you expect it to depend on the what the system itself. Here it depends on S and C and R and so on. Okay. So, when you have exponential st as the input, the forced response is exponential st times the scaling factor. Okay. So, this should also make it, I mean, what we are trying to do is to find ways of making our life easier, right. You want to find the total response, you want to get some algorithms to do this, right, without going through the full machinery of solving differential equations every time. Okay. So, now how will you solve for the scaling factor? You already know this. From now on you can use this, right. Let us say if I ask you for response of some linear circuit to exponential st, you already know that it will be exponential st times something, that is the forced response part of it. Okay. But what is the time something? How will you calculate that? Huh? Well, you are given the differential equation, you can go ahead and solve it completely knowing your, I mean using your knowledge of differential equations, or you can take some shortcuts. What is that? Huh? Huh? No, I mean what you do is you simply assume that this is the solution, right. Vc is exponential st also. So, when you write it out, all those exponential st's will go away. Okay. So, you will be left with only SCR here plus 1. So, that is what appears in the denominator. Okay. You assume that Vc is something alpha times exponential st. Okay. On the left side, you will only have alpha times exponential st times s. And if you have higher order derivatives, s square, s cube and so on. I think you must have seen this also, some operator or something of it's called, or maybe it's denoted by letter D in mathematics, but it's the same, right. So, you want to find the value of alpha, all the exponential st's will go away, alpha will be related to the coefficients of the differential equation. Okay. And in fact, that is what is known as, I mean, when you do Laplace transform and calculate this number, what is that? That is the transfer function, right. That is after all what the transfer function is. I mean, if you apply exponential st and it goes through a Laplace transform box that is labeled h of s, you will get h of s times exponential st. That is the forced response. That is that number that you get from doing all of this. Okay. This is fine. So, there is a lot of stuff that we can do with this. We will do that. But in the meanwhile, first do a couple of things. You can make sure that you derive this whole thing and understand it properly. Those of you who didn't do that, a response to basically the solution to this differential equation. However you do it, it's fine, but convince yourself that this is the case. Don't simply look at what I've done here. One way to do that, what I would suggest is if you don't want to go back to all of the differential equation solution business, you define Vc1 and Vc2 like this and just do back substitution, you should get the same result. The second thing is, this we know is not valid for S equals 1 by RC. So, again there are many ways to fix this. One of the possible ways is you define some SCR plus 1 equals epsilon, okay, and take the limit of epsilon going to 0. That means that wherever S appears, you have to rewrite it in terms of epsilon and then take the limit properly. I think those limits you can take, right. You have limits of exponential by something, and so those you will be able to take, and that is also an interesting result. And once you get that solution, identify what the forced response is and what the natural response is. Okay. Any questions here? But this business of linear systems response to an exponential being the same exponential with a modified scale factor, that is something that you should not forget. That is the basis of everything that we do. Okay. I mean everything that we do with linear systems.